गोपी जन वल्लभ श्री वरदारी गोपी जन वल्लभ श्री वरदारी यशोदनन्दन तुज जनरञ्जन यशोदनन्दन तुज जनरञ्जन यमुनतीरवनचारी यमुनतीरवनचारी जय राधमाधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधमाधव कुंज बिहारी जन वल्लभ श्री वरदारी गोपी जन वल्लभ श्री वरदारी यशोदनन्दन जनरञ्जन यशोदनन्दन जनरञ्जन यमुनतीरवनचारी यमुनतीरवनचारी जय राधमाधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधमाधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा गिरिधरे राधा गिरिधरे श्री राधे जय राधा गिरिधरे राधा गिरिधरे श्री राधे जय गौरनिताय जय गौरनिताय गौरनिताय जय गौरनिताय जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद राम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिवार जगतचर्य षष्ठोत्तर श्री भक्तनाथ स्वामी प्रभुपाद की अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद ग्रंथराज भागवत। जय जय सीतनाथ, I गौर प्रेम। All glories to the assembled devotees to thee. All glories to the assembled devotees to thee. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Shri Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Shivaram Swami Nam. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nam. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravan Chad. Devashesha Shunyavadi Pashtacha Deshatara. Okay, so we're continuing with our reading of Lilamrita. Is that reverberation just me? No, it's a bit loud, I think. Thank you. Everyone can still hear me? Okay. The first few love feasts were not very well attended. So this is Beyond the Lower East Side, chapter from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. But the devotees were so enthusiastic about the feast prasadam that they showed no disappointment over the scarcity of guests. They were prepared to eat everything. That's Rupa. There was something called Brahmana spaghetti, which was rice flour noodles cooked in ghee and soaked in sugar water. Very Brahminical. And there was halava, pushpana rice with fried cheese balls, samosas, split mung beans fried in crunchy pellets and mixed with salt and spices, puris, gulab jamuns, and gulab jamuns. And everything was succulent. That was the word Hayagriva used. Yes, he would say, expressing it waggishly. Everything was very succulent. Eating the feast was an intense experience. We were supposed to be subduing our senses all week, following strict regulations, controlling the tongue. And the feast was a kind of reward. Swamiji and Krishna were giving us a taste of full spiritual ecstasy, even though we were still beginners and still in the material world. Therefore, taking my plateful, I would pray, please let me remain in Krishna consciousness, because it is so nice and I am so fallen. Let me serve Swamiji, and let me now enjoy this feast in transcendental bliss. And I would begin eating, going from one taste sensation to another, the good rice, the favorite vegetable, the bread, and saving the gulab jamun for last, thinking, I can have seconds, and if I like, thirds. We would keep our eyes on the big pots, confident that there was as much as we wanted. It was a time of rededication. We all enjoyed with completely open relish and sense gratification. Eating was very important. Gradually, attendance picked up. The feasts were free, and they were reputed to be delicious. Mostly local hippies came, but occasionally a higher class of experimenting New Yorkers, or even the parents of one of the devotees would come. When the small temple was filled, guests would sit in the courtyard. They would take their prasadam laid in paper plates and their wooden spoons into the backyard garden and sit beneath the fire escape or at the picnic table or anywhere. And after eating, they would go back into the storefront for more. Devotees were stationed behind the pots of prasadam, and the guests would come by for seconds. The other tenants were not very happy about seeing the courtyard full of festive guests, and the devotees tried to pacify them by bringing them plates of prasadam. Although Swamiji would not go down to the temple, he would take a plate in his room and hear with pleasure about the success of his new program. One time, the devotees were eating so ravenously that they threatened to eat everything available before the guests had all been served. And Kirtanananda had to admonish them for their selfish attitude. Gradually, they were understanding that the Sunday feast was not just for their fun and pleasure, but to bring people to Krishna consciousness. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, so now we're going to read from heavy bag. Srimad Bhagavatam. Please repeat. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayat Nastapraisho Vadresho Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishiki. Krishna Sudama Upagate Dharma Jnana Adi Visaha Kalo Nashtadvisham Esha Purana Kodunodita. Srimad Bhagavatam is as brilliant as the sun. After Lord Krishna has left for his abode, accompanied by Dharma and knowledge, it has arisen to save us from the darkness of the age of Kali. Anato pasamam sakshat bhakti yoga doksaje lokasya janato vidvang strakte sattva samhitam yasyam vaishriyamanayam krishne param purushe bhaktirutpatyate pumsam shoka moha payapaha. The material miseries of the living entity, which are superfluous to him, can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. But the mass of people do not know this. Therefore, the great sage Vyasa compiled this Vedic literature, which is in relation to the supreme truth. Simply by hearing this Vedic literature, the feeling for devotional service to Krishna sprouts up at once to extinguish the fire of lamentation, illusion, and fearlessness within the heart. Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam Amalam Yad Vaishnavanam Priyam Yasmin Paramahansyam Ekam Amalam Gyanam Param Giyate Tatra Gyana Vairagya Bhakti Sahitam Naiskanyam Avishkritam Tachchinvan Supatam Vacharana Para Bhaktya Vimuchen Naraha. Srimad Bhagavatam is the spotless Purana. It is especially dear to the Vaishnavas. It has knowledge that is especially appreciated by the Paramahamsas. When carefully studied, heard, and understood again and again, it opens the door to pure devotion, through which one never returns to the bondage of illusion. Artoyam Brahma Sutranam Bharatartha Vinirnayaha Gayatri Bhashyarupaso Vedartha Paribrimhitaha. Srimad Bhagavatam explains the meaning of Vedanta and the purpose of Mahabharata. It reveals the inner meaning of Gayatri Mantra and the essence, and is the essence of the Vedas. Sarva Vedanta Saram Hi Shri Bhagavatam Ishyate Tatra Samrita Triptasya Nanyatra Syadratihi Kochit. Srimad Bhagavatam is accepted as the essence of all Vedic literature and Vedantic philosophy. Whoever tastes the transcendental mellow of Srimad Bhagavatam is never attracted to any other literature. Jai Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Okay, so we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4. Which is called The Creation of the Fourth Order. And we're reading from chapter 28, which is titled Paranjana Becomes a Woman in the Next Life. And we're reading from text 22. So we should have this on the board. Evam Kripanaya. Yep. Okay. Please repeat. Evam kripanaya buddhya shochantam atat ahanam rahitam kritadir enam vayanama pya adyata. Evam kripanaya buddhya shochantam atat ahanam grahitam kritadir enam vayanama pya adyata. Evam kripanaya buddhya shochantam atat ahanam grihitum kritadir enam vayanama pya adyata. Buddhya shochantam atat ahanam grahitam kritadir enam evam kripanaya buddhya shochantam atat ahanam grihitam kritadir enam vayanama pya adyata. Evam kripanaya buddhya shochantam atat ahanam grahitam kritadir enam vayanama pya adyata. Kripanaya buddhya shochantam atat ahanam grihitam vayanama pya adyata. Word for word, please repeat. Evam, thus. Kripanaya, by miserly. Buddhya, intelligence. Shochantam, lamenting. Atat ahanam, on which he should not have lamented. Vihitam, in order to arrest. Kritadihi, the determining king of the Yavanas. Sorry, the determined king of the Yavanas. Enam, him. Vayanama, whose name was fear. Abhyapadyata, came there immediately. Translation. Although King Puranjana should not have lamented over the fate of his wife and children, he nonetheless did so due to his miserly intelligence. In the meantime, Yavanaraj, whose name was fear itself, immediately drew near to arrest him. Please repeat. Although King Puranjana should not have lamented over the fate of his wife and children, he nonetheless did. He nonetheless did so due to his miserly intelligence. In the meantime, Yavanaraja, whose name was fear itself, immediately drew near to arrest him. Report. Foolish people do not know that every individual soul is responsible for his own actions and reactions in life. As long as a living entity in the form of a child or boy is innocent, it is the duty of the father and mother to lead him into a proper understanding of the values of life. When a child is grown, it should be left up to him to execute the duties of life properly. The parent, after his death, cannot help his child. The father may leave some estate for his children's immediate help, but he should not be overly absorbed in thoughts of how his family will survive after his death. This is the disease of the conditioned soul. Not only does he commit sinful activities for his own sense gratification, but he accumulates great wealth to leave behind so that his children may also gorgeously arrange for sense gratification. In any case, everyone is afraid of death, and therefore death is called Bhaya, or fear. Although King Pranjana was engaged in thinking of his wife and children, death did not wait for him. Death does not wait for any man. It will immediately carry out its duty. Since death must take away the living entity without hesitation, it is the ultimate God realization of the atheists who spoil their lives thinking of country, society, and relatives to the neglect of God consciousness. In this verse, the word tad arhanam is very significant, for it means that one should not be overly engaged in the welfare activities of one's family members, countrymen, society, and community. None of these will help a person to advance spiritually. Unfortunately, in the present day society, so-called educated men have no idea what spiritual progress is. Although they have the opportunity in the human form of life to make spiritual progress, they remain misers. They use their lives improperly and simply waste them thinking about the material welfare of their relatives, countrymen, society, so on. One's actual duty is to learn how to conquer death. Lord Krishna states the process of conquering death in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text 9. Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvataha tyaktva deham puna janma naiti mameti so Arjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. After giving up this body, one who is fully Krishna conscious does not accept another material body, but returns home back to Godhead. Everyone should try to attain this perfection. Unfortunately, instead of doing so, people are absorbed in thoughts of society, friendship, love, and relatives. This Krishna consciousness movement, however, is educating people throughout the world and informing them how to conquer death. Harim vina naiva shritim taranti. One cannot conquer death without taking shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Om Gyanatimidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuvamritam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tarati Swapadantikam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasavi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, so we're here in Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, hearing about King Prachanabarhi Shat. And here, King Prachanabarhi Shat is being instructed by Narada Muni. Narada Muni is giving instructions to the king relevant to what he sees the king needs. It's interesting to note later in Bhagavatam, 8th canto, beginning of 8th canto, beginning verses, we get a description of Swayambhuva Manu. And his nature is described there. And Shukadeva Goswami explains that Swayambhuva Manu, his nature was that he was not attracted to sense gratification. The Swayambhuva Manu's nature was that he was not attracted to sense gratification, Bhagavatam explained. Here, Narad's instructing Prachanabarhi Shat, and he's seeing that this person is really very much entangled in the material existence, in sense gratification. And so much so that he kind of comes up with a unique strategy for dealing with him by speaking to him in a roundabout way. That's individual's prerogative. Generally, to be straightforward in your dealings is non-duplicitous. You're just simple. You just disclose what you're thinking. You're straight up. You know, it's called being truthful. It's called just being authentic. It's called being transparent. But here, Narada, he's truthful, straightforward, direct, but he decides to use a strategy which he thinks is going to get the job done. So he wants to enlighten King Prachanabarhi. He uses this allegorical story, which is basically a reflection of the king's own life. So it didn't take too much self-reflection on part of the king to figure out, oh, he's actually talking about me. But still, it was indirect. He started off indirectly and kind of came in through the back door, walked into the kitchen, and then came up front and spoke to him. He didn't just kind of go straight through the front door and on the front door just start giving him the source straight away. So that's Narada Muni's mercy on King Prachanabarhi. And we also need that mercy. And Bhagavatam is Krishna, as we heard. Krishna leaves, wraps up his pastimes, displays them elsewhere eternally, and carries on in Aprakat Dham, performing Leela. But he leaves Bhagavatam for us to instruct us. So these instructions of Narada Muni are meant for our purification and meant for our understanding. Because the conditioned soul is bound by sense gratification, because that's the very nature of the jiva. You have to be attached to something. So if you're not in Nitya Leela, as a Nitya Mukta, eternally liberated soul, then you're in the material world, engaged in sense gratification in some form or the other, anadi, from time immemorial. Krishna Bahi Mukha, Bhogavan Shakari, Jagannananda Pandit says, Krishna Bahi Mukha, that not looking at Krishna, you're entangled in sense gratification. So Krishna is very merciful, and he wants to help all jivas develop an eternal relationship with him, by which they can achieve eternal happiness and freedom from samsara, freedom from the cycle of repeated birth and death. So he is alongside the living entity as Paramatma. In the heart, he is all existence, all energy, everything rests in him. And he also gives Shastra, Krishna, Bhagavan. He gives Shastra for the deliverance of the jivas, for the to help the conditioned souls become free from samsara. And he descends into material existence in unlimited waves, just like in unlimited ways and in unlimited forms, just like as many waves as there are in the ocean. He comes into the material world, displays pastimes in his avatar forms. He also comes as Swayam Bhagavan and displays his Braj Leela. He also comes as Swayam Bhagavan, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to distribute Braj Leela and to savor Braj Leela. So in so many ways, Krishna comes. When he comes with his associates. They also have the same mission as the Lord, to free conditioned jivas from samsara. And they are the main way by which Krishna connects with Nityabhada jivas, by giving them bhakti. Because bhakti is causeless, ahetu, it has no cause, as Bhagavatam describes. Bhakti is eternal, it's endless, it never stops, and it has no cause. It's causeless. Causeless doesn't mean it comes from nowhere. Causeless always means no material cause. It's an English word, causeless. Bhagavatam's language is ahetuki. The bhakti is ahetuki. Hetu means cause, but ahetuki means no cause. No cause means it has no cause other than itself, because it's a real object. Real objects are sat. They exist eternally. They don't have a cause. Bhakti exists eternally, ahetuki. So where does it come from? It comes from itself. Bhakti comes from bhakti. The bhakti in the bhakta gives bhakti to others. So other people therefore come in contact with bhakti. Nityabhada jivas come in contact with bhakti because they come in contact with that bhakti through a bhakta, a devotee. Because a devotee has bhakti in their heart. And there are different types of devotees and there are different degrees of bhakti. But nonetheless, bhakti is causeless and bhakti comes from bhaktas, and that's how it's distributed. Krishna can also give bhakti, that's his prerogative, but that's not his general rule. His general rule is that he gives bhakti through his devotees. He takes the mood of a devotee, he takes the role of a devotee in some of his avatars. At such times, he shows how to distribute bhakti like no other, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed how to distribute bhakti like no one else. By chanting Hare Krishna, people hearing the Maha Mantra Hare Krishna from Lord Chaitanya, immediately they acquired love for Krishna, Krishna Prema. Acquired it immediately. Started chanting, dancing in ecstasy. So no one else acts like that. That's the extreme example of bhakti distribution of Lord Chaitanya. And there are other examples in Shastra and in Shastra of extraordinary distribution of bhakti. But generally, bhakti is given as a bij, a seed, and that is called shraddha. And by association with a devotee, a person has an experience that moves their heart. It moves their heart to the point of attraction. I want that. Don't really know what it is, but I want it. Association produces attraction, which produces aspiration. So by associating with something, you become attractive. That's just a rule of the living being. That's a general rule. Kamana guna sangasya. Whatever you associate with, that's what you become attracted to. It's just natural. Raga dvesha, the two forms of duality, of attraction. It's all attraction. Whether you like it or you hate it, you're still attracted to the object. It's still a form of attachment. Bhaktivinoda Thakur explained that when attachment manifests as antagonism towards another object, it's called hatred. When attachment is manifested as wanting something that someone else has is called envy. When attraction to something doesn't stop and you want more and more, it's called greed. When attachment is directed towards the opposite sex or the sex that one is attracted to, it's called lust. So the jiva is going to be attracted. It's the very nature of the jiva. Because the jiva has two qualities. It exists, it's in existence, and it's aware of its own existence. Everything outside of it is not his existence, is not the individual jiva's existence. It's some other existence. It's Bhagavan and Bhagavan Shakti. So the jiva is constantly in association with other energy other than itself. And therefore it becomes attracted to whatever it's associating with. So the jiva is, anarthapasamam sakshat, is basically the result of whatever it has associated with and whatever it is associating with. That's what we are. That's what we are made up of. Our identity is formed on that. And what we think we are and what we are is basically a result of that. Is the result of our association. And therefore we form attachments to whatever we associate with. So here, we're hearing about the nature of the jiva's attachment to the fate of his wife and children. So the king hasn't died yet, but his thinking is all caught up in how will my dependents survive when I'm not here? That's what he's thinking about. That's where his thinking process is, his bhav, his existence, his mood, his state of being, bhava, is all caught up in that. That's what he's thinking about. So Narada can see this. And he knows, well, this results in samsara. If he carries on thinking like this, if that is where his thinking is at, when he dies, he's going to attain another body. He's going to carry on in samsara, depending on the nature of his attachment. That arrangement is going to be made. Prabhupada says that before one leaves the body, the arrangement for the next body. What's that devotee's name? What's that devotee's name? What's your name, Prabhu? Prahlad? Prahlad? No. So Prabhupada says, Prahlad, that before we leave the body, the arrangement for the next body is already made. It's an amazing thing. Before we leave this body, the arrangement for the next body is already made. So what we're doing now, what we're thinking about, what we're associating with, everything, that's determining what the arrangement for the next body. And before you leave this body, your next material body is already arranged. It's already fully lined up. You can listen to a lecture of Srila Prabhupada given in February of 1969. Maybe on the 19th or something like that, February. Sorry, because of the sound in here, it's like really hard to hear you. Yeah, good question. Thank you. Hold that thought. Yeah. So Prabhupada explains like that in this lecture, that the body is already lined up. Prabhupada's also in that same lecture, because he's talking about how what you're thinking about determines where you go. So here, the king, we're hearing about what this king is thinking about. And Prabhupada is explaining very clearly to us the result of that thinking. He's basically saying you shouldn't be thinking about those things. You shouldn't be thinking about making arrangements for your family members after you die, at the time of your death. Doesn't mean you don't do that at all. But Prabhupada's saying this part of the Bhagavatam, you've got to remember, at this point, Prachanabhahisha, he's not engaged in bhakti. We're not talking about a sadhaka. This is someone who is This is someone who's being preached to come into Krishna consciousness, to take up sadhana bhakti. Vaishnavas, whether they're sadhakas, bhava bhaktas, or premi bhaktas, they're in a different category to conditioned souls. We shouldn't apply the same. It's not quite the same for Vaishnavas. It's not the same because they're already in contact with Krishna. Krishna's already in their lives. A Vaishnav householder, for example, who has the duty of maintaining other Vaishnavas in their family, children, wife, etc. Their form of Vaishnav seva involves some of these material responsibilities. So when you hear about instructions given to conditioned souls, you have to be able to keep in mind the overall Bhakti Siddhanta accumulates in the heart. You don't just take one particular statement or one particular thing in Shastra out of context of the overall Siddhanta, of the overall understanding. So here we're talking about conditioned soul, and we're learning about the facts of samsara. Whatever you think about in your life, whatever you place your attachment on, that is determining your next body. It is continuation. It is continuation. We're just continuing. So if you do good things, you get promoted to a better material situation. If you do bad things, you get demoted. And if you do bad things, means sinful activities, things which are against the laws of God, then you also get punished. You get punished for your sinful activities, and then you get put into a lower body. If you do good things, you get rewards, and then you get put into a better material body. The three categories of good karma, the three external manifestations of good karma are beauty, wealth, and intelligence. So the more beautiful you are, the more intelligent you are, the more wealthy you are, it's an indicator of your previous material pious activity. I look in the mirror, I've obviously got some issues. But none of these things, thankfully, have got anything to do with bhakti. They've got nothing to do with bhakti at all. None of this has got any connection to bhakti. Bhakti is of a completely different nature. Bhakti is Swarup Shakti. Bhakti is internal potency, Chit Shakti, Antaranga Shakti of Krishna. It's got nothing to do with the material consideration. There's no material consideration that applies to bhakti. Bhakti is completely real object of the transcendental world. It's got nothing to do with Maya Jagat. It's got nothing to do with samsara. It's got nothing to do with karma. It's got nothing to do with the material energy at all. So if you get attracted to bhakti, then your situation is completely different. The rules of the general material energy, which is basically how does Krishna deal with conditioned jivas, is different. Krishna says, Samasarveshu bhuteshu. I see everyone equally. This is Paramatma speaking. Samasarveshu bhuteshu. I see every jiva totally equally. I don't give any special treatment. Everyone's just, as Prabhupada says here, foolish people do not know that every individual soul is responsible for his own actions and reactions in life. Every individual soul. God's not responsible. Material nature is not responsible. Right? Every individual soul, the jiva itself, is responsible. Krishna says, Samasarveshu bhuteshu. I just deal with everyone equally. I don't differentiate. But then my devotee, I deal with him differently because he is starting to interact with me. So as soon as you come in contact with bhakti, your interaction with Krishna begins. Then that is a completely different that's a completely different situation for that jiva. That jiva is no longer just entangled in samsara, separate from Krishna. That jiva is now connected with Krishna. And Krishna is then directly involved. So from the moment that the jiva connects with Krishna, Krishna is involved personally. Krishna is personally involved in the jiva's life. So therefore, a sadhaka, so ado shada sadhu sangha. everything in language has to obviously go in an order. You say one thing, then another, and another. But the sadhu sangha and shraddha, they go together. They're one, but they're one thing. You don't get shraddha somewhere else and then you get sadhu sangha. It's one thing. Shraddha comes from sadhu sangha. By associating with a devotee, you get bhakti. That's where bhakti is. By associating with a devotee, you get faith. By faith means the basis of your action. Faith is comprised of knowledge. Faith and knowledge are the basis of action. And faith is the basis of what you act on. Knowledge determines what your faith is. If you've got pure knowledge, you've got pure faith. If you've got impure knowledge, you've got impure faith. If you've got pure knowledge, you get pure faith. If you've got pure faith, you've got the practice of pure bhakti, Shuddha bhakti. So you associate with pure devotees, you get pure knowledge, because everything they say is the Siddhanta, is bhakti. There's a range of bhaktas, from Shraddha to Prema, Kanishta to Uttam, and their understanding and realization of Siddhanta is different according to their progress and advancement. But regardless, the principle is, if you associate with pure bhaktas, whether they're practitioners, bhava bhaktas or prema bhaktas, and you receive their association, then you're coming in contact with pure bhakti. You're getting pure knowledge. You're getting pure faith. And then by that, you can practice pure bhakti. So it's all about association. But the point of it is to become absorbed in Krishna. That's what Krishna consciousness is. That's what bhakti is. So here we're hearing about absorption in matter, absorption in material consciousness. But the reason we're hearing about it is so that we can understand that this is how the conditioned soul transmigrates to the material, into another material body. So similarly, in pretty much exactly the same way, one also transmigrates to the spiritual body. One transmigrates to the spiritual platform, to the spiritual world. It's the same process by association. So in the material world, you're basically thinking about material objects and according to your material attachments, and that leads you into another material body. In spiritual life, you're thinking about your spiritual attachments, spiritual objects, and that takes you into the spiritual world. By the time you leave your material body, just as your next material body is arranged, in Krishna consciousness, one who is fully Krishna conscious, their spiritual body is arranged, and they enter into their spiritual body. That's called Swarup Mukti. There's 5 types of liberation: Mukti, freedom from samsara. One of them is impersonal, Sayujya. That's not a Vaishnava goal. In this same lecture I referred to earlier, Prabhupada says the devotee should desire and want to go back to Godhead. So there's 4 types of Vaishnava Mukti. The main one is that we focus on is Sarupya, attaining a body similar to the Lord's. Jiva Goswami explains in Priti Sandarbha he gives detailed explanation of these types of liberation. And he explains how there are unlimited forms in the spiritual plane, on the spiritual world, and that one of those forms is awarded to the liberated jiva. That is Sarupya Mukti. All of the Lord's forms and all of the forms of his associates, they're all Satchit Ananda, they're all eternal. Prakatyam Hridi Sadyata, they are eternally existing. So the process of Krishna consciousness is to transfer one's attachment from the material to the spiritual through the practice of bhakti, through the association of devotees. The practice of bhakti is cultivated. It involves 9 items, 5 of which we talk about Panchanga Bhakti as the 5 main items of bhakti, of which chanting the holy name is the main. And chanting the holy name of Krishna is the main means of thinking of Krishna. And as one continues in the process of chanting Krishna's name, one's attraction and attachment to Krishna increases. Because the name and Krishna, Nama Chintamani Krishna, Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha, Purna Shuddha Nityamukto, Abhina Tvam Nama Namino. The name of Krishna and Krishna are non-different. By associating with the name of Krishna, you're associating with Krishna. You're contacting Krishna. And by associating with Krishna's name, gradually your attraction to Krishna develops. Your attraction to Krishna develops through the process of chanting. The process of chanting involves hearing and chanting. Hearing and chanting. By hearing and chanting, one's attraction to Krishna develops. At a certain point in the hearing and chanting process, one's attraction to Krishna becomes specific attraction to Krishna. One then engages in bhakti due to being motivated by one's specific attraction. By cultivating one's specific attraction, one becomes absorbed in thinking about everything in relation to that form of Krishna, that particular relationship with Krishna, those associates of Krishna who set the example of what that relationship is. And by the cultivation of those attachments to those spiritual objects, one continues the process of purification, continues the process of becoming attached in that way to that spiritual Krishna consciousness. And the arrangement, just as one's arrangement for the next material body is made before one leaves this body, then the arrangement for one's spiritual body is made before one leaves this body. At the time of most of the examples that Jiva Goswami gives of attaining the spiritual body are examples they're all from Bhagavatam, and they're all examples that take place at the time of leaving the material body. Dhruva Maharaj, self-same body, spiritualized. Gajendra, at the very point of leaving his elephant body, he attained his spiritual body. Narada Muni, at the time of leaving his material body, he attained his spiritual body. That's the general rule, general way it goes, that one attains the spiritual body. But in the cultivation of attachment to Krishna, which is specific, then one will desire a particular form of eternal service, a particular form of relationship to Krishna, which entails the desire for a particular form by which to render that service. So Prabhupada explains this. I'll just read one nice quote from Prabhupada's presentation of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Early presentation of Chaitanya Charitamrita in the form of teachings of Lord Chaitanya. In this section, he's presenting the conversation. So in teachings of Lord Chaitanya, Srila Prabhupada is presenting various instructive conversations that summarize the essential teachings of the Goswamis, essential teachings of Lord Chaitanya. The conversations with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, the conversations with Sanatana, conversations with Rupa Goswami, conversations with Ramananda Roy. So this section is presentation of the conversation with Ramananda Roy. It's the name of the chapter is Supreme Perfection. It's it's the last chapter. So Prabhupada says this word indicates, okay, hold on. The mood of the gopis' emotional pursuit is called Siddha Deha. So Siddha Deha is the general term used to describe the spiritual body. This word indicates the pure spiritual body, which is beyond the senses, mind, and intelligence. So it's got nothing to do with the material body. Siddha Deha is the purified soul who is just suitable to serve the Supreme Lord. No one can serve the Supreme Lord as his associate without being situated in his pure spiritual identity. That identity is completely free from all material contaminations, as stated in Bhagavad Gita. A materially contaminated person transmigrates to one body to another material body by material consciousness. At the time of death, he thinks materially and is therefore transferred into another material body. Similarly, when one is situated in his pure spiritual identity and thinks of the spiritual loving service rendered to the Supreme Lord, he is transferred to the spiritual kingdom to enter into the association of Krishna. In other words, by attaining one's spiritual identity and thinking of Krishna's associates, one can become qualified to transfer to the spiritual kingdom. No one can contemplate or think of the activities of the spiritual kingdom without being situated in his pure spiritual identity, Siddha. Thus, Ramananda Roy said that without attaining Siddha Deha, one can neither become an associate of the damsels nor render service directly to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and his eternal consort, Radharani. So Srila Prabhupada is very succinctly summarizing and presenting this section of Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is on this topic of the process of, as we have here in a very summarized form, giving up the material body, thinking of Krishna, and attaining the spiritual world, attaining shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna. So we have to transfer our thinking. We think about whatever we're attached to. We have to transfer our attachment to Krishna. Whatever you think of, that is at the time of death, that is reflective of your main attachment, and that determines where you go. So this is Bhagavad Gita, Yam Yam Smari, Yam Yam verse, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8. Krishna's explaining. Saratad bhava bhavitaha. That saratad bhava bhavita. Bhava here means state of being. Whatever state of being you're thinking of, bhavitaha. That's the state that you will get. So here Narada Muni is instructing Prachana Bahishat to stop thinking about his material attachments. But you can't just stop thinking about your material attachments. You can only think about what you're attached to. So how does it work? It works by mercy. By mercy, we come in contact with bhakti. By mercy, we become attracted to Krishna, to Krishna's service. And by mercy, we carry on in the process of cultivating spiritual attachments. This is explained in the last section on this last verses of Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, section on sadhana bhakti. It says that it's the mercy of Krishna, the mercy of Vaishnavas, by which one becomes attracted to Krishna. So that is the process that we cultivate sadhana to develop attachment to Krishna, to develop a mood of attachment to Krishna. That's the very definition of sadhana bhakti. That's why we do sadhana. Sadhana bhakti is defined in Nectar of Devotion. I'll finish on this. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And then if anyone has any questions, then we can take them. So this verse defines sadhana bhakti. This is Srila Prabhupada's translation of this verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is found in Madhya Lila, chapter 22, text 105. Kriti sadhya bhavet sadhya bhavasa sadhana vida. Bhavasa sadhana vida. Nitya sirasya bhavasya prakatyam hridi sadhyata. So he says, bhavasa sadhana vida. Bhavita saratad bhava bhavita. So Gita is explaining that what you think of, whatever state of being you're in at the time of death, that state you attain. Saratad bhava bhavita. Whatever you're always thinking about, that you will attain. Here in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami is explaining that sadhana is bhavasa sadhana vida, is that practice by which you develop a particular bhav, in attachment to Krishna. That's what sadhana is. Kriti sadhya bhavet sadhya. To attain that. To attain a particular attachment to Krishna, that's what sadhana bhakti is. That's what defines sadhana bhakti. So we all want to do sadhana bhakti. We need to know what sadhana bhakti is in order to do it. We do sadhana bhakti to develop an attachment to Krishna in a particular mood. Those moods are nitya siddhasya bhavasya prakatyam hridi sadhyata. Such devotion eternally exists within the heart of every living entity. The awakening of this eternal devotion is a potentiality of devotional service in practice. So that's the whole program of sadhana bhakti, is to transfer our attachment from the material to the spiritual. And that becomes more and more refined through the process to the point of specific attachment to Krishna, by which one attains specific relationship with Krishna in the spiritual world. And that's what it means to go back to Godhead. Shri Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Bhagavatam ki jai. Okay, thank you all for your kind attention. Does anyone have any comments or questions or queries? Bored you all to death. Yes.
Krishna Prabhuji, thank you very much for a nice in-depth analysis of bhakti and transmigration of one's life from material to spiritual and entrance into the spiritual world. My question is, I just need some clarification, is that the soul, when it enters into the spiritual world, does it actually take on a new spiritual body, or it's just that the soul is purified? So what I mean is, like, as the soul takes on this material body, in the spiritual world, does the soul take on a spiritual body, or it's just that the soul itself is purified?
Yeah, good question. So it's one and the same thing. So because the spiritual body, what is the spiritual body? The spiritual body is the spiritual feelings, the bhavas of the soul that have developed through the process of bhakti. The siddha bhav and siddha deha is the same thing. So as the sadhaka develops in bhakti, he develops a mood of devotional service. That mood is the purified, that's what it means to purify the soul, to transfer attachment from the material to the spiritual. That's what purified means. So the actual form of a purified soul is a spiritual body. But the spiritual body is explained to exist eternally, and one attain. Generally, the English words used for this are attainment, or rewarded, or given. So, but the subjective experience of the individual is the revival, is the reawakening. That's the subjective experience of the jiva. The jiva is reawakening, reviving. Yeah. So Bhanuswami was here recently. The main shloka on this topic is a Bhagavatam verse, third canto, 15th chapter, text 14 or 24. You can search it up. Vaikuntha Murtaye Vasanti. These are words in that verse. Vaikuntha Murtaye. May have the verse number wrong. Oh, actually, I think I got it right here. So that verse says that there are unlimited forms in Vaikuntha, and these forms are all expansions of the Lord. So most commentaries on that verse explain that in relation to Krishna's own forms, and how in unlimited Vaikuntha planets there are unlimited forms of Krishna. In Priti Sandarbha Anuchek 10, Jiva Goswami is explaining Sarupya Mukti, and he cites the same verse, but there he explains it differently. He explains that those forms, Vaikuntha Murti, also refer to the associates of Krishna, of the Lord. So in Goloka it refers to Braj associates, in the Vaikuntha planets it refers to the Vaikuntha forms. He says that those forms are like rays of light emanating from the body of the Lord. And he says it's one of those forms that is given to the liberated soul at the time of attaining the spiritual body. So those forms are already there. And one of those forms is given according to the, ultimately it was all according to Krishna's mercy, according to the desire of the Lord for that particular devotee. So the devotee is given that. Now in our sadhana, as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, then we're cultivating that desired point of Krishna consciousness at some point in our sadhana, right? So there's sadhana bhakti. In some point in our sadhana bhakti, or at some point in our bhava bhakti, the attachment to Krishna becomes specific, and based on association, and the aim of going back to Godhead becomes specific. So that means a specific mood of devotion that one is cultivating, following a particular associate of Krishna. So according to that, at the appropriate time in the devotee's life, Krishna is giving that body. So that body is eternal. Prakatyam Hridi Sadyata. Yeah. So the same question that you just asked me, I asked Anu Swami the same question when he was here about 3 or 4 weeks ago, whenever it was. And I asked him in relation to this particular verse of Bhagavatam, because from my understanding, that's the only verse that we have that is used as a reference on this exact question. And he said that yes, that is the only verse that he knows of. I mean, he knows because he's, extremely versed. And that is the thing. That's the point of reference for this topic. Yeah. And that's what Jiva Goswami explains in relation to that. So my understanding is you've got so from the objective, from the stating externally, stating objectively, then yes, you attain it. You haven't, but subjectively, the experience of the sadhaka is that he is reviving it. It's about the understanding of the process by which you get to there. Yeah, because that's the context by which all this happens. The subjective experience is reviving, is uncovering, but objectively, all the forms are already there. One is awarded. Yeah. So this is where Prabhupada uses terms like attains when it's referring to Siddhadeha, when he's referring to spiritual body. He uses words like attains, awarded, like that. Yeah. So, yeah.
I mean, if one attains the body, spiritual body, isn't it that then the soul is different from the spiritual body? Because it's like if we attain a car, we enter into the car, that means that ourselves in the car is different.
Yes.
So then if the spirit soul attains the spiritual body, that means the soul, isn't it separate from the spiritual
Yeah, good question.
body?
Yeah, that's a very important that's an important question. So the Jivatma is the Tatashta Shakti, right? Swarup Shakti is Chit Shakti, Sat Chit Ananda, Ladini Sandini Samvit, right? The Jiva Shakti is different from Maya Shakti. It's different from Bahiranga Shakti, external energy, matter, gross and subtle. It's got nothing to do with it. So the material body is a product of the material energy. Anato Pasamam Sakshad. It's a totally a product of the three modes of material nature. The spiritual body is a manifestation of Swarup Shakti. The Jiva is part and parcel of Paramatma, is part and parcel of Bhagavan. He is also of a similar nature, right? He's also Sat. He also has awareness of self. He's Chit. And then if he's in the material world, his Ananda is manifest by sense gratification. If he's in Brahmananda. If he's yoga, realizes Paramananda. If he's in Bhakti, he's Bhakti Ananda. So he has the Ananda portion, Satchit Ananda. Same in quality, different in quantity. So the attainment of the spiritual body is not different from the Jiva because it's spiritual. Jiva is Parashakti is spiritual nature. Parayamatastovanyam prakriti vidime param. He's not part of, this is Gita, he's not part of material energy, he's part spiritual. Spiritual body is spiritual. So it's not different. So Sarupya Mukti is merging into Brahman. Swarupya Mukti is, so how do we put that? Swarupya Mukti is Swarupya Mukti. It is, there's a non-difference between the Atma, the Jivatma, and his eternal mood of devotion, eternal form that he performs that devotion in. So it's not different in that sense, right? But we don't say that the Shakti is Swarup Shakti. We don't say that the Jiva is Swarup Shakti. He's Tatashta, right? So there's a simultaneous oneness and difference. So it's a difference, but at the same time there's oneness, right? It's a good thing about Lord Chaitanya's philosophy. It explains everything, right? The Chincha Veda Veda Tattva. So in one sense, the Nitya Mukta Jiva, the liberated Jiva, as a sadhana siddha, you can't say that his body is different from himself. It is his very nature. It's its very self. In terms of an analytical analysis, the elements, right? Swarup Shakti, Jiva Shakti, there is a combination of Jiva. It's still a Jiva. So the sadhana siddha Nitya Mukta associate is different from the Kaya view Siddha associates of Krishna. There are expansions of Shakti Tattva. The Radharani's associates, they're expansions of her, right? They're Shakti Tattva. All the Gopas, they're all Shakti Tattva. So and then there's unlimited manifestations of them in all of the Leelas of Krishna. The sadhanas are not in the same category as them. They're not the same. So amongst the associates of Krishna, there's different categories of siddhas. And they don't all have the same capacity. So Krishna's parishads, who are Shakti Tattva, they associate with Krishna everywhere in all of his manifestations. But the sadhana siddhas are not like that. There is reference in Shastra to numbers of forms of different siddhas. But there is reference in commentary on Chandogya Upanishad saying that siddhas, they have a certain number of manifestations, and there's some number in the thousand. This is another topic, but they're not all in the same category. So it's a bit more information on that. Yeah, that a little bit.
Yeah, no, that helps. I was under the illusion that the spiritual soul is the soul that goes to the spiritual world, and that's it once it's purified. But what you're saying is that it's the spiritual soul does go, but then there's a spiritual body that's given, and there's no difference between that spiritual body given and the soul, and it's effectively one and the same, although they're still different.
Yeah.
because one is marginal energy,
Yeah,
and one is spiritual energy.
that's correct. That's my understanding. Yeah,
Okay.
and that's the impact of bhakti. Yeah. Prabhu? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it seems to be an absent key from the world of described to which Tashma maybe Prabhupada's teaching of goodness that like a dream, awakening and the brain. So like when you go to bed, wake up, so you forget the dream state. So this whole material slogan, absent can be seen as a fraction of a second. Then Krishna already arranged, this is what I would like clarification, it's already arranged situation. When you come into that, it's as though you never left. There seems to be healing through the spiritual world because our soul is ours, it's who we are. No less than two souls, or there are kind of double duplicate or something like that. That will always like part of this. Hard to understand that. It's definitely shakti, magical, in creating a situation like we're completely in illusion now. And I think it's the spiritual world when you awaken, I just know that much like a dream state. It's more real there than this.
Okay. Comments on that? Few places in Shastra where we can read more on the topic to clarify our understanding, because the understanding is a combination of various points of our Siddhanta that do need to accumulate in the heart and mind of the individual devotee to develop a clarity of understanding. So the reference is Shastra. So Brihat Bhagavatamrita, Gopkumar, his return to Braj, his experience, the subjective experience of entering into Leela. That's one explanation of the presentation of the subjective experience. Narada Muni, Bhagavatam first canto, that's an example of Vaidhi Bhakti, through Vaidhi Bhakti attaining Siddhadeha, spiritual form. So, and then commentaries and section in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu on Sadhana Bhakti, particularly text 270 to the end of the chapter, 304. It's all very important. And Mahaprabhu's conversation with Ramananda Roy, Madhya 8. Those sections are also very important reading material on this topic. So, yeah, what you're expressing is the subjective experience of the individual and a little bit of a merger of some of the points of tattva. So, yeah, as with all things relating to the inconceivable truths of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Vedanta philosophy, there are details and understanding that accumulate over time. Some devotees, they just say, oh, don't worry about these topics. I don't really agree with that. I don't think that's very helpful, because it is the inquiry and process of, like Prabhupada was expressing, studying and hearing and cultivating understanding through submissive inquiry and service, that we as sadhakas develop a clarity of understanding by which our bhakti faith is based on, and which propels us forward in adhikar and taste in chanting. So we have to study, but the reference is Shastra, and all different Vaishnava, all of our Vaishnav community in ISKCON, they're all studying the same books, right? We're all studying the same Shastra, Goswami literature, as presented to us through Parampara, Srila Prabhupada's teachings, Srila Prabhupada's books. So, yeah, that's why we're very fortunate in ISKCON Auckland. Like, we have personalities like Banu Swami who come. We study Shastra, read Shastra, and then question, and then we can develop our understanding. So, important topics. Yeah, thank you. All right, we'll finish there because it's quite late. Thanks, everyone. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Great.